Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, good whatever time it is, wherever you are, whoever you might happen to be. Welcome once again to Anime Octane, the show in which we look at a recent piece of anime entertainment and we talk about what was good about it, what was bad about it, what we liked, what we didn't like, themes, tone, messages, and so on. In the course of that discussion, we will wind up spoiling quite a bit of the show. So this week's show is the spring 2021 anime SSSS.Dynazenon. If you have not seen it and you don't like spoilers, then I would suggest you find some other thing to watch or go watch it and then come back after the show and watch it after the fact. If you don't mind spoilers or you have seen it, feel free to jump into the chat, hang around, talk to me about what you liked, what you didn't like, what my opinions are like, and what you didn't like and liked about my opinions. And who's giving you those opinions? I'm Rodney Brown. I'm the editor-in-chief of Nerd Caliber. I am first-person shooter on Facebook as a cosplay photographer. I am Burley_adopter on Twitter as mostly a cosplay journalist and doing a couple of other things. So, before we get into the show, or into the discussion of the meat of the show, what is SSSS.Dynazenon? Why does it have that weird name? And where did it come from? All right, so we're going to start with, we'll bring up an image here of the main cast. The pilots plus one of Dynazenon. So, SSSS.Dynazenon, like I said, anime that aired this last spring. In the US, it aired on Funimation. It's by Studio Trigger. It is kind of a sequel. I guess it's a sequel, although with almost entirely new characters, to the 2018 anime SSSS.Gridman. To explain Dynazenon, I got to explain what that was. Gridman was a Trigger reimagining. You can't call it a reboot or even just an anime adaptation, but a reimagining of the 1993-1994 live-action tokusatsu series in Japan called Gridman the Hyper Agent. And that actually kind of explains where the SSSS comes in. In the anime version, in the United States, Gridman the Hyper Agent was released in a modified adaptation, very much like what they've done or what they did with, or are continuing to do, I guess I should say, with the Power Rangers, in that the action that did not require you to see any human faces is pretty much taken right from the Japanese, and then they remake the stuff around it with an American cast. That show was called Superhuman Samurai Cyber Squad, cyber with an S, because branding is tough, I guess. And it is part of the reason why the SSSS exists. You find out in the last episode of SSSS Gridman that actually stands for something, not just a real-world American version of a Japanese show. That show basically revolves around the interdimensional agent Gridman who fights kaiju, and the teenage boy, high school boy, and the various other friends and so on that support him, who winds up becoming merges with Gridman and becomes this gigantic hero, robotic hero that fights the kaiju, the bad guys. Dynazenon is a sequel to that in that it also involves giant mechs. In this case, it is much more a mech anime. I'll go back to the cast image. These the four people to the right of the image, not counting the sort of reddish-haired, pigtailed girl, pilot the various parts of Dynazenon. It is a combining mech, and the parts include a race car, a mech warrior, essentially a giant robot, a jet plane, and a submarine. So when they combine, they become Dynazenon, which can take on the form of a even bigger giant mech, or um, a dinosaur, essentially. This is Dynazenon Rex, or Dynarex. Um, and they also fight kaiju. Now, there is a connection. Let's find out, where's the knight? Losing track of my image here. Anyway, there is a team of people who wind up. It's killing me. I can't find them. Did I not create? I might not have created an image for that. So while image is up, let me see if I can really quickly create an image for that. So a character that starts out as a kaiju and a bad guy with a human form in the original SSSS Gridman anime winds up in that anime becoming kind of a hero, and winds up winds up in Dynazenon as a here we go. We'll get that up there. As an adult, a young adult, with a character or an entity like Gridman called Grid Knight. And as a human, his name is simply Knight, as in Knight. So in that case, it is to some extent a direct sequel, but the world is a completely different world. The whole Gridman universe sort of, in the original Tokusatsu series in '93, he is a hyper agent, a hyperdimensional agent, so he comes from a different dimension. And that is part of this anime adaptation, or these two anime adaptations as well. There are, as we find out with the second adaptation, multiple worlds in which kaiju exist. So, Wikipedia actually has a pretty short and solid description of the general plot here. So I'm kind of just going to read mostly right from that. So, and I'll go back to the cast image so you can see, well, actually, yeah, there we go. So it's the story of Asanaka Yomogi, who is the boy in the hoodie with the bright blue trim. Ordinary high school boy who is kind of trying to figure out whether or not he's going to actually have a relationship with this crush, and that is the girl with the pink hair. That is Minami Yume. And while he's dealing with that, he runs across as this homeless guy under a bridge named Gauma, who is the one in the sort of sketchy outfit with the one in the middle, the one with the yellow bandages and the bare midriff, who claims that he is a kaiju user, and the city gets attacked by a kaiju. Gauma summons this giant mech Dynazenon and winds up sort of recruiting, partially deliberately and partially accidentally, Yomogi Yume, and in the green hoodie, this 33-year-old sort of shut-in NEET named Koyomi, to be co-pilots along with him for the various parts of the Dynazenon mech. The girl, who is Koyomi's cousin, Chise, and hangs around with him way too much, basically a middle school dropout, winds up piloting something or working with something later on, but it's not really part of Dynazenon. So that's basically the story. And then it's kaijus keep attacking. They have to find out why, figure out what it is, and try to stop what it is. And what it is turns out to be, because I might as well just bring this up, a team of what are called kaiju eugenicists, which apparently both breed and control kaiju. And, this is them. And you find out right within the second episode that Gauma used to be a member of that team thousands of years ago. Apparently these people live forever, or a very long time, and broke up with the team for reasons that don't get fully explained until way later on. You'll pardon me, folks. I'm solo and I'm on allergy pills, which are drying me out like crazy. So that's basically the gist of what this show is. To get into what's good about it, you kind of have to say also what's good about Gridman, because they are of a thing. You know, they are two peas in a pod, for sure. And they were created with that purpose. When Trigger announced that they were going to do this, they called it the Gridman universe, and the idea was they were going to create multiple anime series based on this. And at the end of this is a spoiler, but it doesn't matter. At the end of Dynazenon, the end title card indicates that there will be an upcoming anime that features both Gridman and Dynazenon. So it sort of combines those two worlds, maybe, or brings them both together in one new world. So who knows? So what do I like about it? The character designs. You know, they are absolutely Studio Trigger designs, but in their least over the top. These are not Kill la Kill. They're not even the pastel color wash colors and character designs of Promare. And some of their other more recent things. They're not the super cutesy stuff from Little Witch Academia. Maybe if anything, it's very similar to some earlier stuff that their creators have done at other studios. Let's put it that way. Once again, getting to the team here, these uniforms are just, so Kill la Kill, slightly more realistic. But again, the characters are much more sort of traditional anime design, and I like both the creativity and the reining in of Trigger's sometimes really out there designs and animations. The animation, when they do it, is fantastic. It is a combination of 2D and 3D CG animation, which they do a wonderful job of blurring a little bit and making it, making the 3D CG of Dynazenon, all of its parts, the kaijus and so on, look less like really super fluid CG, boy, that doesn't match with everything, characters, and more like, okay, I buy that these are two things in the same universe and they work together really well. The Sakuga, the fight animation, is fantastic, in part because all the fight animation is done in CG, so it's pretty easy to get super fluid animation, real excellent Sakuga out of that. And again, they still do an excellent job of sort of tamping that down so it's not quite as both too fluid and too stiff, which is what bad 3D anime looks like. The backstories of these characters are really interesting. One of the things about the plot description there, it completely avoids the fact that Yume has a really difficult thing that she's got to overcome personally, dealing with the loss of her sister, who seems as though she took her own life a number of years ago. So Yomugi is doing his best to support her with that and help her figure out what went on, while also dealing with, how much of that is him basically just crushing on her. Koyami is dealing with whatever it is that drove him into the shut-in existence and whether or not he can pull himself out of it. And she say whether or not she can come to accept the fact that she needs to go back to school and get on with her life, and stop using Koyami's status as a NEET, as a shut-in, to sort of reinforce her own worst behavioral traits of skipping school and so on. Everybody has to deal with that, and Galma's backstory with the kaiju eugenicists, and what that ultimately sprang from, which is kind of a weird story, but again, it's Trigger and it's anime, so what do you want? That's very interesting in how they deal with his backstory. So everybody's got a backstory. The struggle, actually, even the eugenicists wind up with backstories. The sort of long-chinned, red-haired guy, Onija, this guy is the only one who really, really is just kaiju are great. People who try to stop kaiju are bad. Galma betrayed us. We're going to kill everything. Everybody else on that team has varying degrees of things that they're dealing with and acceptance of Galma's, what they view as betrayal. He's the only one that really just never, ever gets over it. And what he's doing there is, this is sort of a cool thing. When a kaiju appears, they use various sort of split hand gestures like that, each one of them slightly different, to take over and control the kaiju. So when Galma said he was a kaiju controller, that is what primarily the eugenicists do, is they control kaiju. And he was one of them. So everybody has this backstory. It's for the most part interesting and well developed, particularly Yume's, which is definitely the most important part of this. And I'll get into that thematically, but it really does tie into sort of the biggest story arc of SSSS Gridman as well. Thematically, not from a story standpoint. The sound work is fantastic. The soundtrack is solid. It doesn't stand out. There's no killer opening or ending, song, but it's there. It's solid. The opening theme to Gridman, SSSS Gridman, was a banger, which is kind of too bad that this doesn't quite rise to that level. In every way, this is very slightly lesser of a story, Gridman, except for the backstories and the way they integrate with the plot. That's actually, I think, makes more sense and is a little more engaging a series of stories than the original, than SSSS Gridman. Got to get those 4 S's in. So if there's anything else I really particularly like about this, that pretty much nails it. The animation's really solid. The character writing, but again, this gets into the sort of the backstories. The character writing is really good. There are troublesome secondary characters that have nothing whatsoever to do with the kaiju, that are part of various characters' backstories and lives that ultimately become understandable characters. They aren't particularly redeemed, but they're not villains. And they're not particularly, just one-note bad guys. Even the secondary characters get that treatment. And that's a cool thing. It's very smartly written in that way. So that's pretty much it for my likes. It's easy to get through. It's 12 episodes, as is SSSS Gridman. So it's not like a 13 or 14 episode series. And it's just really solid. Beautiful designs, fantastic animation, worth watching, and worth listening to or reading subtitles, however you do it, because of the actual story and the characters. I can't say anything about the English dub. I always watch in subtitles, and since none of our other teammates are on, who usually do watch with English dub, I can't give their impressions. So, what did I dislike? Not a whole lot. Boy, there's really not a whole lot. I thought that they didn't really do enough to explain the connection of Knight to Gridman. It pretty clear that because he's called Knight and the character design of his Grid Knight giant robot, or kaiju robot, he actually turns into it. It's kind of hard to say. Is in fact Knight from the last few episodes of SSSS Gridman. That's obviously clear, but how he wound up with the ability to move from different world to different world in the years since he first became Knight, and now that he's an older, a young man, but older, because originally his name was Anti, and he was, from the looks of it, I would guess early high school. In SSS's Gridman. Now he's clearly a young man, college age or slightly older. They could have done a better job of explaining that, but again, they do the same thing in SSS's Gridman, explaining the nature of the world that anime takes place in, which is bizarre and very interesting. They explain it, but in short bursts and then in conversations around it, so you sort of have to take those short bursts of explanation and go, oh, I get, that's what they're talking about. Okay. So they don't play it down to the audience, which is good, but sometimes with ideas this a little outlandish, you might need a little bit of playing down to some of our older audience members. Second drink. Lean away from the mic in case it picks that up. So, I can't think of anything else that I could say I don't like about this. Not really. It's a solid, entertaining. I looked forward to every episode once one ended. It's like, okay, all right, cool. I can't wait for the next one. And not because of cliffhangers. They don't end these on cliffhangers. It's like, all right, we're getting to know more about this world. I want to find out more about Gamma's background. I want to find out more about the eugenicists. I want to find out if something really does develop between Yomogi and Yume. Now, will Koyomi get his crap together before? They don't really imply this, but you've got a 33-year-old shut-in spending an awful lot of time alone in his apartment with his, from the character design, I'm going to go middle school age cousin. And luckily, they don't ever go down that path, and it changes. She winds up going back to school. He winds up, well, it's a spoiler show, as I've said. He winds up going back to the work environment, and finding it fulfilling. So, yeah. So I guess I can't say I don't like that. I like the fact that they don't go down that path, even though they do. I guess I kind of don't like the fact that they hint at it by even having this relationship exist. Let's see. Anything else? I can't think of anything else I can say I dislike about it. So I guess I'm rushing right through this, and I'll go right into themes, tones, and messages. So one of the sort of overriding themes of both this and SSSS Gridman is that there is a prominent female character who has to deal with some issues that that affect the outcome of the general story and plot, as well as her own personal story. In SSSS Gridman, it's actually the villain, I guess, is the right word, although the villain is being coerced by um, a being from another dimension that is straight out of the original Gridman live action series. By the way, in um, Superhuman Samurai Cyber Squad, um, that character is played by Tim Curry. And I regret not ever seeing that show because I would love to see everything Tim Curry is in. Mariana, hola, welcome to the show. We're talking about the anime SSSS.Dynazenon. It was back in spring 2021, and which means it wrapped up in June, early June. And we're spoiling it because we're talking about details of the show to talk about what's good and bad and what worked and didn't. So again, if you haven't seen this show and you are interested in it and you don't like spoilers, thanks for stopping in, but you probably shouldn't be listening to this or watching this until you've actually seen it. If you don't care about spoilers or the show, hang around. Well, if you don't care about the show, why would you hang around? Anyway. So yeah, both of these series have that as a central focus. In this case, it's Yume, who is absolutely a protagonist. In SSSS Gridman, it was... I'm going to have to go and look at my Wikipedia to get the character name, because I'm going to mess it up. Shinjo Akane. So the character, just a detail thing, the character who is called Kalekan in the SSSS live action show from the 90s, the American version of Gridman the Hyper Agent, is called Alexis Carib in the anime SSSS.Gridman. Anyway, so yeah, so that, I had a picture, there we go. That's right, I brought them up before. So Yume's character arc or story arc about her backstory isn't as odd as that of Akane from Gridman. And there's no way you can describe that except odd. And I don't necessarily want to spoil that one, so I won't say why her backstory is so odd, but it's there. Other themes, it is not so much the theme of friendship as magic as you usually see in an awful lot of anime. It is about cooperating through difficulties, both interpersonal difficulties, difficulties within your own life, sort of, putting down the difficulties long enough to get the stuff done that needs to be done. But also dealing with those things in your own life so you can be better at getting done what needs to be done. So it's a story about the importance of personal growth and recovery. Right from Gama, who's homeless and is still reeling from apparently more than 1,000 years ago, his own betrayal of the people who were his friends, and to Yume and dealing with her sister's death. Koyomi dealing with his social anxiety and his struggles with being in the workforce. It's all of that stuff. And they all have to come to grips with that or fight through it to be able to fight the ultimate, final boss, as it were. I think that's pretty much it as far as message goes. There's nothing else really that... I guess you could say one of the other messages is that don't make assumptions. Find stuff out. The kids make assumptions about Gauma before they know he was with the eugenicists, certainly after they know he used to be with the eugenicists. And none of those assumptions are exactly true. You may make assumptions, and a lot of people make assumptions around her life about her sister's death, which turn out to mostly not be true. So, yeah, find out. That's, don't listen or accept what is sort of the general consensus around you. Find out. I guess that's pretty much it as far as messages go. So would I recommend this? Yeah, absolutely. It's a good anime on its own. It's an excellent anime if you're a fan of giant mechs, particularly combining mechs. It is an excellent anime if you are an original fan of the Tokusatsu live action series from back in the 90s. By the way, the studio that did that was a studio that essentially created that whole concept, the studio that made the original mid-1960s Ultraman. So they knew what they were doing. Yeah, I would recommend it strongly. And of course, if you're a fan of Trigger, it is a Trigger anime. There's no question about it. Rating of 1 to 10. You know what? I should probably just go look at my anime list and see what I rated it. Or I'll say it now and see how accurate I am remembering what I called it. I think it's a solid 7, maybe a 7.5. So 7 is very good. So 7 is very good. Great. 8 is excellent or great. 9 is excellent in their listing, and 10 is like perfect. So yeah, I would say 7.5, somewhere between very good and great. So definitely watch it if you're into this sort of stuff. A strong recommendation from me. Another recommendation from me is, and we'll do a couple of business things here at the end. If you are on Twitch, if you have a Twitch account, we'd love to have you go to twitch.tv/nerdcaliber and follow us. Maybe watch us on Twitch and make some comments and, join in there. When we're doing this live, because when we're doing it live, we're not only live on YouTube, we're live on Facebook, and we're live on Twitch. So please check us out there if you are of a mind. And also, if you are of a mind to check things out, check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/nerdcaliber. We have 3 tiers. The lowest is $2. We basically want to make it easy for you to come in and help us get content that we can put up on our YouTube channel by going to more cons, more conventions. And the videos go up on YouTube. We've got video from Kineticon that went up just late this past week. Check that out. It's pretty interesting. I think the question is, what is the worst ship in My Hero Academia? And that's it. Our next show tomorrow night, Nerd Week Live. Today has just been busy. I've been posting up new pieces of nerd entertainment information into Nerd Week Live's group on Facebook all day. So it's going to be another big, busy show tomorrow. So tune in, 8 o'clock tomorrow. We'll talk about nerd news from the past week. Big trailers, big reveals. Pretty interesting. And I think right now, this may change. Right now, our Full Fat Spoiler Chat Thursday is Star Trek Lower Decks Season 2. So stop on by if you've seen it and you don't mind spoilers, because it's called Spoiler Chat. Thank you for being in the chat and joining with us, folks on Twitch and on YouTube. And we will see you in an upcoming show.